Members, good evening. Are we all sitting comfortably?
Wonderful.
Ready to begin? Good.
Chocolates and the coffee are missing.
Right, it's 7:15, so I think we will make a start. We've got quite a lot to get through this evening. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Local Plan Subcommittee, Thursday, 5th of June. Welcome to members of the committee. Those of you in the audience, very nice to see so many of you here, and welcome also to anybody who may be watching on the Council's YouTube channel. I'll start with apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Cunningham, who's substituted by Councillor Schwer, and apologies from Councillor Parker, substituted by Councillor Prime. I think everybody else is present and correct. Declarations of interest. Could I please have the declaration of any disclosable pecuniary interest or other registrable interest relating to items on the agenda, having regard to the code of conduct for members and having taken appropriate advice where necessary before the meeting? Councillor Walsh.
I've got two, I think, minor ones. Concerning the Deals of Kelvedon proposal, I did meet, along with another councillor, with the applicant. It was several years ago, and it was just to listen to what they were talking about. Secondly, on the Sybil Headingham Travellers site, I was at a meeting on other matters a few weeks ago where two concerned local residents were there, and there was some discussion about the application process, but again, I expressed no particular view whatsoever on the proposal.
Okay.
So I hope I can stay and take
Remain
part.
and vote. Yep. Okay, that's absolutely fine. Nobody else? Don't see any other hands up. Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. Members, we don't have the minutes for the 22nd or 28th of May this evening, so we'll take a look at those at a future meeting. Agenda item 4, public question time. We have several speakers registered for this evening, and as I've stated at previous meetings, I will bring them forward when it's immediately before the item that they are interested in, so that we don't lose the thread of what people are saying. We have, I think, a fairly large contingent from Sybil Headingham here this evening. It's very nice to see you all. So I have agreed with officers that we will bring the Sybil Headingham items up to the top of the agenda. And then you obviously will be perfectly welcome to stay for more of the meeting after that if you like. Otherwise, you know, you're welcome to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. And just also to point out, we have had written representation on the Sybil Headingham Gypsy and Traveller site from Mrs Kay Beavis, which was emailed round to everybody earlier, if you've had a chance to have a look at that. Right, so I think we can then move on to the main body of the meeting. So we will move agenda item 9, which is Braintree District Local Plan Review, Regulation 18 Draft Allocations for Sybil Headingham. So we'll move that up to the top, and I have speakers on this one. So if I can ask Faye Calver, who is a Wethersfield Road resident and wishes to speak on specifically on the Wethersfield Road item. If you'd like to come forward, you're there already. Well done, thank you. And put your microphone on. Should be, that's it. You have 3 minutes, everybody, and we are going to be quite strict on time because we've got a lot to get through. I'll let you finish a sentence if you're halfway through. All right, but there you go, off you go.
Thank you. I would like to thank Madam Chair and all members of the committee for giving us the opportunity to share our apprehensions regarding this proposed local planning application. I have agreed to voice concerns in the meeting raised by members of our valued community and myself, and I would like to draw attention to the following concerns. Firstly, me personally, I have lived and worked in a number of towns, villages and cities, and I have to say, until I moved to Wethersfield Road, had never experienced the true meaning of a neighbourhood. I would like to highlight the concerns which have caused anxiety, insecurity and a sense of vulnerability amongst us all, which are as follows. The wooden planks which have been erected without prior communication are being used as a boundary at present to divide the proposed site and the terraced houses, providing minimum security, creating a feeling of exposure. The proposal for this site leaves the land open for any member of unknown persons to reside within a close proximity to the local residents for an undetermined length of time and will increase traffic along an already busy road. The properties along Weathersfield Road are surrounded by meadows, agricultural land, Victorian houses and Grade 2 listed building. The type of property and density of this development is out of keeping with the neighbourhood properties. Combined with the added noise, light pollution and increased number of vehicles at the site, it is already impacting this tight-knit community. In addition to this, the busy road has regrettably experienced numerous accidents, damage to cars, injury to people and destruction of boundary walls and fences. The proposed site entrance is on a dangerous blind bend in the road. There is limited visibility and would unequivocally result in further accidents. In the meadow in question was once home to beautiful old trees and an array of wildlife, which in recent months have unfortunately diminished. Further expansion would undoubtedly cause an irreversible detrimental effect on the remaining landscape and fauna. Regrettably, the irreversible changes that have occurred cannot be rectified, but our hope is that this proposal and any future proposals for any form of modifications to this land will be refused. There have been several applications for this grassland to be developed, and for reasons we have indicated today, these applications have been refused. In conclusion, the residents of Weathersfield Road strongly object to any form of development or further altercations to the site. Thank you.
Brilliantly timed. Thank you very much, Ms Calver. Our next speaker, which is on the same item, is Mr Roy Bussink. Good evening.
Good evening. Many thanks for accommodating us and moving us to the forefront of the agenda. I would like to talk about when we were flooded, as I have lived on Weathersfield Road as part of a great community for nearly 3 decades. Water poured through the farm fields, through the field now under discussion, along our back gardens and eventually through our houses. We were regularly flooded up to our back doors, the water only being kept out of our properties by homemade flood barriers. We regularly sandbagged each other's houses, looking after our elderly neighbours. Parish Council considerately provided pallets of sandbags on the road to the proposed traveller site. I was personally flooded through the house 3 times, others likewise. The flood water was composed of soil, farm chemicals and sewage. It was once so bad that my fridge freezer floated at waist height. The subsequent flood lagoons were put in place to negate flooding at the 1017 junction with Rectory Road. We were not really a consideration. Since this time, the road outside number 1 and the entrance to the proposed traveller site still floods to some degree. There is a culvert at the back of number 12. The residents worked together to keep this clear because if we did not, we would certainly flood again. If the site is approved, this would make matters far worse. If the waters did come again, the soil has gone and been replaced by concrete for standings, it's been compacted, and there would be more sewage added to the deluge. We have never been on the Environment Agency's flood list despite being flooded numerous times. In terms of traffic, Weathersfield Road has never been busier, in part due to the asylum centre. We regularly have emergency services speeding past on top of the normal traffic. Of course, on a weekend, the sunny days brings out the motorcyclists. We also have the bus depot and, of course, agricultural vehicles taking up the entire width. The road is in a poor state, with trenches worn into the sides and potholes causing vehicles to weave into each other rather than get pulled into the bank. There is no footpath at all into the village. The road is often gridlocked. The speed limit of 30 miles per hour is rarely adhered to. The road is a detritus of wing mirrors and headlights along its whole length, as in many places it's not wide enough for 2 vehicles. There have been many accidents, including a fatality, a 22-year-old man a few yards from the traveller site entrance. Boundary fences, walls and residents' vehicles have all been damaged regularly. The entrance to the proposed site is on a blind bend. You simply can't see traffic coming as you edge out and you rely on others stopping. So much so that the travellers have already asked number 1 if he could cut back his hedgerow as it's dangerous leaving. It's the most hazardous part of the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Bussink. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr John Curtin, also Weathersfield Road residents, also wishing to speak on the same site. Thank you.
Dear Councillors, I'd like to endorse all the previous points, but I have further concerns which fall into my specialist interest and training as an ecologist. I noted from the Prayers Hill application of October 2019 that a bat survey was carried out. Babestril and Sonotone bats, which are both vulnerable listed, were found. And this is probably in part due to the unkempt woodland, mature hedgerows and unimproved grasslands they use as feeding grounds and roosts. Depending on the species of mitosis bat found, it may have been a population of greater mouse-eared bats. These are critically endangered worldwide. Brandt's, Alethco and whiskered bats, all species of the same genus, have so little data that we actually don't know of their range within the UK. In the Ecological Survey submission that refused this planning application, further surveys were clearly planned. I emailed the ecology officer responsible and asked for these surveys, whether they'd been done and what the results yielded. I'm still waiting for a response, 15 days. I would have expected a specialist chiroptologist to have confirmed the data given the potentially very rare species discovered. Since the work started, I've noticed the number of bats hunting my garden have dropped significantly. So I assume the number of soprano and common pipistrelles, as well as the nocturne bats, have already been greatly affected. Dormice, on already a vulnerable list, love mature mixture hedgerows, yet their population has not been ascertained, but they are known to be in the area. Skylarks may also have used the field, but for these species, it may already be too late due to the lack of prompt enforcement action. The last survey of newts I can find was carried out over 5 years ago, and although there was no evidence of their presence, they may well have moved into the area. Circumstantial evidence from the residents says that newts do occur there, including the greater crested one, but this needs confirming. I'm also concerned about the potential changes to the land and impact of potential flooding. The change of having hard standings and caravans and soil compactions will greatly change the ability of water to be absorbed and then released slowly. They, having already circumnavigated planning stroke building control and installed a sewage system, which, if a gravity-fed one, has the potential to release raw sewage into the ditch which runs under the cottages and then into the local ponds and watercourses. My concern as an ecologist is that this sort of thing would greatly damage, and I would humbly suggest that it requires urgent action in order to clarify its impact.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin. Thank you very much. Members, that's the last of the speakers on the Sybil Headingham agenda item. So I will ask... sorry, I should have said Mr. Hopkins has withdrawn. Sorry, members, I forgot to say that at the start of the meeting. So I now ask Alan to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. So, Sybil Headingham is currently identified as a key service village in the local plan. It has a range of local services available, including GP, shops and schools. It serves an important function servicing smaller villages such as Castle Headingham and Great Maplestead. Local constraints include flood risk, traffic issues, particularly at peak times, and concerns have also been raised about capacity in the primary school. The village has a large number of historic assets, including 2 separate conservation areas and numerous listed buildings. Sybil Headingham is a key service village. However, at this stage, we're not proposing to allocate any of the housing sites put forward. Officers have carried out an assessment of those sites, and for the reasons set out in this report, have decided not to recommend allocating those housing sites. That doesn't mean that this might not change in the future. As we go through this process, further sites may become available or be identified, and if any of those sites do, they can be reported back to this committee for a decision as to whether or not they should be included in a future version of the local plan. Okay, so starting with site SIB 2265, which is on your map. This is land south of Wethersfield Road. It was 2.82 hectares. It was proposed for housing. The site has a number of heritage issues and has previously been refused planning on heritage and landscape grounds. It's not proposed for allocations for the reasons set out in paragraph 3.11 to 3.16 of the report. The recommendation 1 is at paragraph 3.17 on page 83.
Members, as with previous meetings, with the sites that are not allocated, if I see hands go up and anybody wants to comment, fine. Otherwise, I will take it that we'll deal with recommendations at the end, all right, and just move on to the next one, all right? Thank you, Alan.
Okay. The next site, this is CMH 2266, land adjacent 14 Swan Street. It's approximately 5 hectares in site and it was proposed for housing and self-build. The site is suggested in 2 parts. It was submitted as a whole site, however they have also suggested that a smaller section at the front could be considered for 7 to 10 dwellings. However, the site has concerns about heritage, impact on the countryside, public rights of way, as well as some other concerns on infrastructure. It's not recommended for allocation with the reasons set out in paragraph 3.20 to 3.25 of the report, with the recommendation 2 being at paragraph 3.26 on page 84.
No comments? Right, no? Okay, Alan, thank you.
Right, next site, 2267, north of Oxford Lane. This is a plot land scheme and has multiple landowners. The site is adjacent to listed buildings and has a public right-of-way running through it. Access will be very difficult and the number of owners that are involved in the site could impact on its delivery. It's not proposed to allocate the site for all the reasons set out in paragraph 3.28 to 3.31 of the report, with the recommendation being at paragraph 3.32, page 84.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Alright, next site 2268, land at Hawkwood Manor. This is 11.5 hectares for housing and affordable housing. Site has the potential for historic impact on the conservation area and listed buildings, but the primary access concern would be the access. Lamb Lane is in a very narrow lane. It's not proposed for recommendations for the reasons set out paragraph 3.34 to 3.37 of the report, and recommendation 4 is at paragraph 3.38, page 84.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Right, next site, this is the Swan Inn, 0.89 hectares. It's a housing, proposed for housing. This is the former grounds for the Swan Inn, including its garden and car parks. Main concerns are heritage impact on listed buildings and conservation areas, and as can be seen from the map, there is quite considerable flood risk in that area. The site is not proposed for allocations for the reasons set out paragraph 3.40 to 3.43, and recommendation 5 is at page 3.44, page 85.
Okay. Right. Yep, can move on. Thank you, Alan.
Right, 2270, this is land west of Swan Street. It's 12 hectares in size. Yeah, 270, yeah. This site has been put forward for housing. There is a correction to the report on this paragraph. So paragraph 3.47 should read that I'll read this out in full if I may, Councillor.
Yes,
Right.
thank you.
The Parish Council has concerns about access onto Lamb Lane and the impact on Swan Street, the site being within a conservation area and is a greenfield area. The scale of the development being too large and out of character with the area. The visual impact of the site, the proximity of its heritage assets and the potential development density and impact on infrastructure, in particular the primary school, which is oversubscribed. However, the site isn't recommended for allocation as per paragraphs 3.46 to 3.49 of the report, and the recommendation 6 is at paragraph 3.50 at page 86.
Okay, everybody all right with that one? Yep. Okay, thank you.
Right, next site, SIB 2514. This is land west of Prayers Hill, put forward for housing, approximately 3.14 hectares in site. This site has previously been refused planning permission for housing. There are concerns or continued concerns about landscape impact, character and appearance of the area. It's not recommended for allocations for the reasons set out from paragraphs 3.53 to 3.54 of the report, with the recommendation 7 at paragraph 3.55, page 86.
Okay, yes, that's all right. thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
This next one, this is
This is-
the Weathersfield Road, where
This is
we've
the-
had speakers and where the majority of the audience are in, so we will have a full presentation on this one. Thank you. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. So this is SIB 2517 Stablebrook, Weathersfield Road. It's approximately 0.7 hectares and has been proposed for four Gypsy Traveller caravans. It's not been proposed for a travelling show person site. Just a couple of corrections, which I apologise for, but 3.61 of the report should read the access has limited visibility when looking to the west from the site entrance, but visibility looking to the east towards Sybil Headingham is okay. And 3.62 and is considered at the end of the paragraph should be deleted for clarity. So turning to the presentation, the site currently has a residential caravan on it, day room and storage units, as well as some smaller caravans on the site. Apologies. To the next one. The site has been had the number of potential constraints identified on it, including potential contamination issues for brick, glass and tile manufacture. The site isn't within the Environment Agency's flood zones 2 or 3, so it's not identified as being at risk of flooding from river sources, but it has been identified as having potential surface water drainage flood risk. I have to apologise for the quality of the maps. This is unfortunately as far as the Environment Agency let you zoom in on their website, and there is a deliberate reason for this. You can see the rectangle at the rear of the site, which is the current buildings. They're currently buildings that where the current development has taken place. Now, the reason for that is the surface water drainage is very hard to map accurately. So what this map means is it's not to say that a decision should be made on surface water drainage based on this map. What it means is it flags up that there is a need to do surface water drainage research on the site to a more detailed level than what is currently available. Right, so the issue of surface water drainage is a matter that can be dealt with through a planning application process. However, the local plan is also undertaking its own flood risk assessment work for the overall local plan. Now, moving on, this is the view looking west towards Weathersfield. The road is a 30-mile-an-hour zone with and it's quite narrow around this corner. If we look on to the next one, if we are looking towards Sybil Headingham, you can see it's got a reasonably long visibility display there. So visibility that direction seems to be acceptable. Each of the sites that we do allocate in the local plan will be subject to an assessment from highways, the county highways, and further information will be provided on any highways related matters as we progress through the local plan. The entrance site to the site is reasonably sized. There are some existing larger mobile homes down there, so they are able to access the site. A road of this width would typically, if we were looking at this for housing, for example, you wouldn't be able to adopt a road that wide, so the capacity would normally be limited to 5 in this sort of case if we were talking about normal housing. There is a public right-of-way on the boundary. That does, however, I'm afraid it was a little bit overgrown there, but it does appear to be used. You can see the actual bottom of the path in the picture there is quite worn. It is outside the boundary of the site. And if we carry on, sorry, apologies. I think the battery's going on this thing. Apologies, members. There we go. This is a picture of the existing facilities. The white caravan, that is currently the mobile home that has been used. The buildings at the back there are used for storage, and there is also a day room which you can't quite see behind the, I think that's the black building behind the white caravan there. The site does have a number of quite nice trees around it, so as part of the process for the local plan, we'll be speaking to colleagues in other departments to see whether or not any trees on potential site allocations will need any sort of additional protection, so whether or not we will need to get some TPOs put on site, so that would be ongoing. And now this is just to give you members an idea of what the site looks like. So this is looking northeast towards Sybil Heading, and the field is quite high up, so from a sort of landscape impact point of view, you can't really see the site very well from the surrounding area. So it is quite well contained, and this is looking west, sort of towards where the bus depot, which is a little bit more to the left on that picture, there, so that you can see some little bit of way, but it's not particularly open. And this is just one of the other trees on the northern boundary, which may be worth considering looking at getting a TPO on it. And finally, this is looking towards the houses on Wethersfield Road. You can see the boundary fence that was referred to earlier. Now, the matter of boundary treatment is something that can be dealt with through the planning application process. That can be sorted out through appropriate design and condition. So that would be something that we could potentially look at. And I think that was the last picture for you. Now, just to address a couple of the points, I mean, we have checked the road traffic data for the area, and I've not been able to find any sort of fatal accidents in this area. We've got some data that goes back about 25 years, but it only goes to March this year, so if something's happened in the last 3 months, we wouldn't necessarily be aware of it. But I don't have a record of a fatal accident in this particular location. Okay, so when considering other recent permissions for gypsy traveller sites we've had in the district, we consider these sites to be in a reasonably close proximity to a key service village, and whilst it does lack a footpath to the village, other sites have been approved on appeal, which have worse or not as good or no footpath available to the nearest village, and in some cases are actually incredibly remote. For example, the small holding at Patterswick, which is a considerable distance from the nearest village. Fox and Pheasant decision, which is closer to Whitecombe, but also doesn't have a footpath. And it's clear to officers that inspectors are prioritising the need to provide for gypsy traveller sites over certain other concerns. Council does have a duty to meet its identified housing need, and that does include the need for gypsy travellers. And whilst it would be preferable to have a pool of sites that the committee could choose from, we currently only have one site submitted for consideration. If members were to agree this allocation, that would still mean we need to find an additional 33 pitches through the local plan, plus an additional 11 pitches for travelling show persons. So, considering the characteristics of the site, recent appeal decisions on appropriate locations for gypsies and travellers, officers of the view that the site should be have a draft allocation in the local plan. The recommendation A is at paragraph 3.65. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Members, would anybody? Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question at this stage. Is it still the fact that a pitch can take 2 caravans? So in technically, if this is 4 pitches, it could take 8 caravans. Thank you.
Yes, Alan. Would you-
Yeah, technically, you'd normally see a mobile home, like as you can, not like that one, as you can see on one of the previous slides. It's like the one in the corner there. You normally get one of those. You would normally get a tourer, which is the smaller ones that they'd use to go out and about. You'd often get a day room, which is a more permanent structure, and you'd sometimes get associated storage. If this was a travelling show person site, you would have you'd need a bit more room for things like fairground rides, catering vans, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, I think Councillor Walsh was next, and then Councillor Schwer.
Thank you. I'm not ward member for this area, and I did say that I met a couple of people recently earlier on, but just speaking on a personal basis and on planning grounds, I and I note there's, concern in the community about the proposal. I think that's not unusual when travellers' proposals come forward. Personally, on planning grounds, I would be inclined to endorse this proposal. I think we have a duty to provide suitable housing for all communities in our district. This is quite modest. I believe it wouldn't have the travelling show persons element. We do have that national requirement to make an allocation. If we don't accept something like this here, it increases the need elsewhere. It would, of course, this is call for sites, so it would still be subject to a planning application. And I know from another context, my wife happens to work at a school in Dunmow, and their land was informally occupied without any permission. The travellers had to leave, but some provision has to be made. I think it's better if it's made in a coordinated and planned way. So personally, I'd be inclined to go along with officers' recommendation, although I know there are disbenefits, but there usually are in planning. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Schreer.
Thank you, Madam. Just a question for the officers, really. Taking into account the amount of local knowledge that's come forward tonight with regards to the site, and especially the flooding factor, and looking at the factor potentially there may be an increase in climate change going forward in those projected years with the amount of rainfall, could the officer indicate the number of potential pitches that could be there, taking into account the map of flooding and data that's already available, and would that vary, taking those into account?
So they've indicated that they would like 4 caravans on the site, so that's the mobile homes. So there would be four families effectively on that site. My understanding it is a related family. It's also not for a transit site provision or anything like that, so you wouldn't be getting lots of people you don't know turning up to that area. Transit pitches, they're a completely different consideration at this time. So yeah, we would get, so you get your 4 permanent or mobile homes, then you'd get your 4 touring caravans, which they're used to go out and do things with. So yeah, so you'd probably be, depending how big the families really are, maybe 8-10 people perhaps, I think would be a rough indication.
Okay. Right, yes, do you want to come back, Councillor Schreer?
Yeah, could I just ask for verification of that, because I'm talking about if you take the areas on the mapping that was considered with the flooding, would that with the potential increase in the weather increments going forward in the years to come in that period of time, would that have a resulting squeeze on the pitch numbers or a reduction? That was really my question, and just ask for your opinion.
So probably misinterpreted the question there, apologies. So the flood map is showing surface water drainage. As I said, it's a guide rather than a fact that you should make a decision based on. That is actually the data that's modelled from 2040. So so that is what the high-level modelling thinks the situation could be like in 2040. So you can see on the key there, we've got and the majority of that site is quite low risk. It's a little unfortunate I couldn't get a clearer image, unfortunately, for members. But there is still a little bit of concern there, as you can see, potentially with the access way there that could have some deeper flood water on there. The actual sort of layout and design, that's quite well controlled in terms of sort of caravan licensing, things like that, and particularly with sites. You have to have sort of a site manager designated when you have a site like this to actually sort of run the place effectively. Although it would most likely be a resident on there already. You could, I think, looking at that site, comparing some of the other sites we've got in the district, I think it's quite reasonable within the area not shown in that surface water map to be able to get 4 pitches on there. I think that should be reasonable to do.
Right, okay. Councillor Bowers was next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, just following on from that point, and I know obviously it was raised in public question time in regards to the flooding situation. the numbers that are on that slide, are they specific to that area? What I mean is like the between 1% and 3.3%, is that a generalisation that's used in this, or is it specific to that area? So for argument's sake, if we're saying more than 3.3% chance each year, is it the potential that the true figure could be a higher percentage than that, and 3.3% is just used as a threshold, or is that really specific for this area?
It's not specific for that area per se, because that is the standard applied over the whole of the Environment Agency's area. So where you see that blue anywhere in the country, that would be the chance of a flood on that site.
At 3.3%?
Yeah, 3.3%. So yes, so when it's dark blue, so the dark blue areas, they're the high chances. So there is a 3.3% chance that it could flood. So it's, yes, yeah, apologies, yes, more. So it could go more than 3. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Coleridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Got a question around, so we've acknowledged that we haven't got enough sites brought forward for traveller sites. So how do we ensure that our local plan has enough sites if we haven't got the sites brought forward? And are we effectively accepting this one, even if there are quite a few negative elements to it? Is my question, which I know.
Yes, good question. This is the only site at the moment that's come forward for gypsy and traveller accommodation in the current call for sites, the only one, and we do have to provide 37. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know whether Alan has the answer about where they come from. But I will say, I think relying on officers' professional opinion, I don't think we would want to draft allocate a site if it was, in their view, planning-wise, completely unsuitable. I'd like to think we wouldn't do that, but I think there's no denying the pressure on us. We've been told we have to provide this number of sites, and this is the only one that's come forward. Alan, do you want to respond to that at all? Then I've Councillor Ritchie and then Councillor Abbott.
Just to say, yes, it is unfortunate that we only had one site submitted. Further sites may come forward as we carry on going through the process. This is only a draft allocation if it were to be approved, so we've still got to go through Regulation 18 consultation, Reg 19 consultation, and then obviously there'll be the independent examination. This is a local plan allocation, it's not a planning application, so they will still need to go through the planning process, and a lot of the issues that have been raised as a concern, such as the surface water drainage issues, highways, and the boundary treatments, as well as potentially ecological impacts, could probably be better assessed through the planning application process. Now, when we recommend sites in the local plan, this applies to any site in the local plan, not just ones for gypsy travellers, we have to be convinced that that site is appropriate. Now, some sites we do recommend, and as you go through the process with the planning application, certain things may arise that perhaps either limit a site's capacity from what you originally thought it was going to be. So you think you've got a site for 150, but you've actually only got 100, and that can give you problems further down the line. And some sites may not even come forward at all. That could be from anything from either a planning issue that you were not aware of at the time, or even things like land ownership issues, which aren't even a planning consideration for us. So we have to be convinced, that there is a reasonable prospect that the site could come forward, but there's no guarantee that the site would come forward, and that site would still need to obtain planning permission.
Thank you, Alan. Put that a good deal better than I did. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to elaborate a bit more on Councillor Coleridge's question, which is almost similar to what I'm about to ask, if that's okay, officers. If we haven't met the number of allocations by the time, or as we get closer to submission of the local plan, how do we make provision for any numbers that we need to reach for gypsy, traveller and travelling people's sites, please? If you could just answer that question.
Yeah, we've got the we took the gypsy traveller policy to last week's committee. That allowed for us to meet that need through strategic growth location allocation, the planning application process. and we added a caveat about small site allocations as well. If we get to a more advanced stage, say perhaps the end of Reg 18, and we haven't got any more options, then we're going to obviously have to start looking at our strategic growth locations and actually say to them, look, we need to get the Gypsy Traveller sites provided. Congratulations, your site's going to have a Gypsy Traveller site on it. So that's how we will have to provide it. We have previously supported expansion of sort of some of our existing sites as well. But yeah, if we have new sites to assess, we'll assess them as they come forward. If a site is appropriate, we'll make a recommendation. If a site's not appropriate, we won't make a recommendation. I think that's the easy way to do it.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Could we just go back to, I think it was the first slide, where I think part of the site was already, is part of the site already allocated? No. So it doesn't have any current allocation. Does it have any current planning?
Sorry, Alan.
It's had a couple of change of use prior approval applications, both of which the outcome was that they would need to apply for planning permission. I think they were for agricultural to residential prior approvals, but yes, they were told they had to go through the planning process.
I heard some of the residents talking about planning enforcement, so I know that's not for us tonight, but I just would raise concerns if planning enforcement isn't doing what it's supposed to do. I've got a question. One of the speakers talked about protected species, obviously cognizant of the fact that at planning application stage we're required by law to understand what's on a site in terms of protected species. Is there any equivalent need for us to do it at this stage?
So we have to have things like habitat regulations assessments that they're done as well. We would also look at any objections that were submitted, and if there was ecological, a detailed ecological assessment would probably be something that would be more appropriate for a planning application. So the local plan does look at more of the high level stuff, which is where your HRA type thing that would come in. But if there was
even if we knew there were protected species on the site. And that there could be harm to them, we'd still allocate.
That depends on the, that would depend really on what the species was and where it was on the site. A site could come forward with a protected species on it, provided that the area of the site that had the species on it was properly mitigated, and you could do that through a local plan allocation, but you would still need to go through the full process for the actual planning application itself. So we are looking for sort of potential, proper showstoppers on the whole site at this time. Looking at a lot of the pictures we've had up there, a lot of the site is actually quite open and empty as it is now. So the species potential within the site itself does appear to be quite limited. Although I can see that there could be potential on the boundaries, particularly in the hedges and on the trees.
Yeah, final point I'll make is that's
yeah.
my concern, and we heard one of the residents seem quite knowledgeable about this. I mean, obviously bats are completely protected in law, and if there are rarer types of bats, that raises the threshold. So because we don't understand that fully, that's my main concern. If we were to allocate this at this stage, is that I'm wondering whether deferral might be better to understand what's on the site, but that's just a suggestion.
I know that members of the committee are well aware of this, but just for anyone else, and as Alan has said, this is very early stages draft allocation. There are 2 layers of public consultation still to go before it even gets in front of an inspector, and any site that is eventually allocated in the local plan still has to have planning permission, and that's where a lot of the detail, the nitty-gritty, can be decided and approved or refused. So this is very early on. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Finken.
I'd like to reinforce the point that Councillor Coleridge made, that the number of possible dwellings that are being proposed, that is a tiny proportion of the number that we need to find in the district as part of the local plan process. And also, I think I'd like to draw attention to the point that Councillor Abbott was referring to, that the existing use of the site is illegal. It hasn't had planning permission, and yet we're endorsing an extension of the permission by giving it part of the local plan. I understand all that you're saying about this is only one part of the process, but I don't think this is a suitable site for what is being proposed, and I think it will be abused, and I don't think we should be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay.
The bats will have gone.
And,
By the time you get to planning,
yeah.
the bats will have gone.
Okay, thank you. Right. Yes, Sarah, yes, of course.
I just want to correct the last statement made, which is not illegal. It might be unauthorised development, and we will take that away and look at whether there's been an enforcement report for the site and what's happened to the investigation. But it's unauthorised. It's not illegal. It doesn't become illegal until it's actually gone through formal action and through the courts.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. All right, Councillor Bowers.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just following on from the point earlier in regards the number of pitches that are still going to be required as part of this process. Is there the potential? So, Alan mentioned that it's kind of we will have to look at the strategic growth locations if it comes to that. Is there the potential that subject to whatever decision is made, and this is only at like a draft sort of allocation stage, but is there the potential that if we get to the stage in regards no other sites come forward and we have to look at the strategic growth locations, that they potentially would be more suitable than say this site? So is there the potential that even if this site was put forward at this stage, it could be taken out at a later date and we find all the numbers through a strategic growth location?
I believe it can be deallocated, is that? Alan?
Yeah, a site can be allocated. It could also be deallocated if there were any sort of showstoppers identified. Then we would just have to explore the strategic growth option or any other sites that may have been put forward to us at that time. So.
And would that come back to local plan, to this committee for deallocation,
Yes, it would,
if that was the case? Yeah, okay. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just for clarification here, having listened to everything that everybody has said, whether they're on there with permission or not, etc., should planning permission be put in and even refused by this council, there's nothing stopping it going to appeal and being allowed. And for them members, and Councillor Walsh will know this site very well, if you look at the site that was allowed in Patterswick in the complete total middle of nowhere, and we refused it and it went to appeal and it won, please residents do not hold your breath hoping that that will happen, because it won't. We've seen it already. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowes-Flint. And I know in my ward in Whitecombe we had same thing where a site was subject to enforcement action, was refused and then allowed by an inspector at appeal. So it is very difficult. Yeah. Okay. Right. I think everybody's said what they want to. We've had a good discussion on this. Generally speaking, members, as you know, I'm going to take all the recommendations in a block at the end. I think with this one, given the amount of interest and the amount of discussion and the differing views, I'm going to ask if anybody would like to move the officer's recommendation that this site is a draft allocation. Is anybody willing to do that? No? Yes? Councillor Walsh, thank you. A seconder at all? Yeah, Councillor Martin, thank you. Can I have a show of hands for allocation of this site, please? 2, 3, 4, 6. All right, and against?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Any abstentions?
Chairman, yeah.
No.
You have.
So it's me.
Yeah.
Right. Brilliant. Thanks, members. Right. No, that's absolutely fine. It's it's what you're here to do. I am going to go with recommendation for draft allocation at this early stage, bearing in mind everything that has been said. So that site is with officer's recommendation for allocation, all right? If I can just turn then to the block recommendations, pages 80 and the top of page 81 of your agenda. All the other sites were not allocated for development. There was no particular discussion on those at all. Could I have a mover, Councillor Monday, and a second, Councillor Abbott, and a show of hands for those, please? Thank you, members. That finishes the item on Sybil Headingham. Members of the public, thank you very much for attending. I realise that has probably not gone the way that many of you would have liked, but it is early days. You're welcome to stay if you like, otherwise I'll give you a few minutes for those of you who want to leave. Thank you. Right. Okay, right, members, thank you very much. Can I just bring the meeting to order? Thank you. Right, we will now return to the agenda order. So we are now on to item 6. No, we're not. Item 5, sorry. Regulation 18, draft allocations, Earl's Cone. And we have no speakers on. This is with Katerina.
Thank you, Chair, members. Earl's Colne is identified as a key service village within the settlement hierarchy of the district adopted local plan. This designation recognizes the village's sustainability and capacity to accommodate proportionate levels of housing and employment growth. The village benefits from a good range of local services, including education, healthcare and retail provision, and it is served by regular bus routes providing connections to Colchester, Halstead and surrounding settlements. As part of the local plan review and the recent call for sites process, a total of 10 sites were submitted for consideration in and around Earl's Colne. These submissions have been assessed against the agreed site assessment methodology, which includes sustainability appraisal, infrastructure and environmental constraints, accessibility and alignment with the emerging spatial strategy. I can confirm that comments submitted by the Parish Council have been reviewed and taken into consideration as part of this process. In addition, the Earl's Colne Neighbourhood Plan is progressing towards referendum. While not yet adopted, its special priorities and policies have been considered where relevant in forming the recommendation before you today. In terms of site outcomes, only one site is recommended for residential allocation, site Earl 2127, which is already allocated in the adopted plan and delivers to up to 20 homes. No new housing allocations are proposed beyond this retained site. One site, Earl 2124, is recommended for employment use, delivering approximately 2.99 hectares of land for classes E, G, B2 and EAB uses. This site has planning permission and is under implementation, with initial infrastructure work having commenced. One site, Earl 2123, is recommended for biodiversity net gain, reflecting its active agricultural use, ecological characteristics, and off-grid infrastructure. The remaining sites are not recommended for allocation due to various factors, including poor access, heritage impacts, flood risk, landscape sensitivity, and planning history, which collectively indicate they are not suitable for development. One large site, Corn Valley Golf Club, Earl 2125, is deferred for further discussion at a future meeting, given the scale of the site and the strategic implications of its potential development. I will now summarize the recommendations for each individual site as set out in the report. Right. Early. Sorry.
Apologies, can I interrupt members? Apologies, Alison. I should have remembered. I thought about it earlier and then forgot. I just need to declare an interest in the site 2127, land south of Morley's Road, because it's a few hundred yards from my own home. I have never discussed it with anyone, and it is a site that is already allocated. It's not a new site coming forward. I meant to say that at the start and say, having taken advice, there's no reason for me to vacate the chair, but just for transparency, because I do live a few hundred yards away from it. Right, apologies, Katerina. Thank you.
Right, it's Earl 2119, land to west of the Kennels, East Essex Hunt. The site was proposed for housing. No proposed for allocation as per the reasons set out in paragraph 314 of the report. We can go to the next.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah.
Right. It's Earl 2120, land at Woodpeckers, Lowesfield, for housing, not proposed for allocation as per the reasons set out in paragraph 323 of the report.
Okay. Yep.
Earl 2121, land at Cornstoves, Halstead Road, housing, not proposed for allocation as per the reasons set out in paragraph 330 of the report.
Yes, thank you, Katerina.
Earl 2122, Rushpits, Coggeshall Road, for housing, not proposed for allocation as per the reasons set out in paragraph 337 of the report. For this site, we have additional information. A pre-application inquiry has been submitted for this one. As this is part of a confidential process, no further details can be disclosed at this stage.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Earl, can I?
Yes, carry on.
all
Yep.
right. Earl 2123, Earl's Corn Farm, Halstead Road. It's submitted for housing, affordable housing, self and custom built, and biodiversity net gain. Proposed for allocation for biodiversity net gain as set out in paragraph 344.
All right, okay. Yep.
Earl 2124, Hungerfield, Earl's Corn, employment. Proposed for allocation for employment use classes B2 and E, A, B, and G as set out in paragraph 352.
Okay.
Earl 2126, land north of Station Road. Yes, the previous one was the golf course that we'll discuss later. Right. 2126, land north of Station Road. For housing, note proposed for allocation as per the reasons set out in paragraph 368.
Okay, yep.
Earl 2127, land south of Morleys Road for housing, proposed to remain allocated for housing development for 10-plus dwellings as set out in paragraph 377.
Yeah.
And the last one is Earl 2128, Essex Hunt Kennels, not proposed for allocation as per the reasons set out in paragraph 387.
Right. Thank you very much, Katharina.
Thank you very much.
Members, you'll note we do have obviously one large site, one site recommended for a large number of housing there, and that will be discussed at the later meeting, September, October. Otherwise, that's fairly straightforward. I don't see anybody wanting to comment. So in that case, members, the recommendation for the Earls Cone sites are on pages, 6 and actually on page 7 of your agenda. Could I have somebody to move? Councillor Butland, second. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Madam Chairman, can I just thank...
apologies, yes, of course.
Can I just thank Katharina?
Yes.
It was her first presentation
Yes,
and she's done
I know.
extremely well. Thank
I
you,
did.
well done.
But did say it was very nice to see you here. Right, that's been moved, I think, and seconded. Can I have a show of hands that we accept those recommendations? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Right, so we move on now to agenda item 6. And now I've got a speaker. Agenda item 6, which is the draft allocations Regulation 18 for Hatfield Peveril, and I do have a speaker on this, which is Councillor Michael Renaud from Hatfield Peveril Parish Council. Good evening. Would you like to come forward and have your 3 minutes?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on potential site allocations in Hatfield Peveril area as part of the local plan review process. The Parish Council asks that close attention is paid to the Hatfield Peveril Neighbourhood Plan Housing Needs Assessment, November 2021, produced by ACOM, included in the evidence base for the HPNDP review made by Braintree District Council in September 24. The indicative housing requirements stated by Braintree Council for the HPNDP review showed an upper limit of 656 homes up to 2038, the end date of the reviewed plan. Since 2015, a total of 648 dwellings have been approved for development in the neighbourhood plan area, including HATF 2185 off Malden Road, original planning consent having lapsed and a new outline application now being determined. The HBNDP Housing Needs Assessment concludes that with Windfall and other development over the planned period, development will significantly exceed the upper limit previously indicated by Braintree Council. It's acknowledged that central government now requires a review of the local plan to increase the levels of new housing allocated across the district. The Parish Council suggests that further development within the neighbourhood area should be targeted to address a significant highlighted area and ageing population. A comparative shortage of 4-bed accommodation is identified as being caused by older residents unable to downsize to smaller bungalows or flats, providing specialist housing for older people. This could be delivered through 1- or 2-bed bungalows or flats on small sites. These units should not be dismissed as an inefficient use of land and would help release underoccupied 4-bed units, which in the present situation could be regarded as such. A considered purpose-built development should ensure that bungalow units indicated at outline planning stage did not evaporate on a full site application. In addition, 1- or 2-bed flats could provide for entry-level households moving into the area. On a different note, as development continues in Braintree and neighbouring districts, will the local plan review be able to progress the build and infrastructure will follow mantra through pressing for a long-awaited Malden Link Road to take traffic directly to and from the A12 as relief from the overloaded Malden Road within the village, currently undergoing major repair and resurfacing work. Alongside this, significant review and development of larger education and health facilities that directly service the village are required. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, councillor, very much indeed. Right, members, no other speakers on this item, so Gary, I think you're presenting the report on this one. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hatfield Peveril is identified as a key service village in the local plan. This means the village has a good range of everyday facilities and services, in addition to a mainline railway station to London Liverpool Street with a journey time of around 45 minutes. The 71 bus route between Chelmsford and Colchester runs every 30 minutes, and the Sustainable Travel Corridor will receive upgrades to sustainable movement, such as cycle lanes, as part of the A12 widening DCO if it comes ahead. The A12 widening scheme will also deliver a new all movements junction at junction 20 and divert traffic, particularly HGVs, away from the street, improving safety and the environment of Hatfield Peveril Village. The Duke of Wellington roundabout, however, will need to handle similar peak time traffic and remains under pressure. The village has open space allotments, a place of worship, which have designations to protect these functions. There are 2 local centre boundaries marking the main area of retail uses within the village, and Maltings Lane is within 1 kilometre. The town centre of Whittam is 3.5 kilometres away. The local plan allocated within a comprehensive development area a total of 300 dwellings. These sites are now largely completed. A further 5 sites were granted planning permission, including 2 sites which were granted on appeal, totaling 240 dwellings. And that's my overview of Hatfield Peveril. On to the first site. This is Hat F2192, and it's land adjacent to Crabs Hill Farm. It's actually south of Stonepath Drive. It's a small paddock, and the landowner states that development for 10 to 15 dwellings could be built here. And access would be via an existing access point on Crabs Hill. This is proposed to be allocated, so I do spend a bit of time on this. The paddock has equestrian structures and hard standing, which the promoter claims is brownfield status. However, this is disputed by officers. We don't think it's brownfield according to the NPPF. The location is also opposite a nursing home, but there's not a lot of traffic going down that lane. It sits within parcel 2F in the landscape capacity analysis, which is a medium to low capacity parcel, but it does benefit from strong containment with mature trees and hedgerows. The development is unlikely to compromise the rural valley landscape due to existing screening and flat topography. There are no constraints by the way of heritage, ecological designations, or public rights of way. The main issue is access. It would require a short stretch of Crabs Hill, which is an unclassified road. It lacks pavements and street lighting, and there is no right-of-way to go through Stonepath Drive, although it is currently possible to do so as the vegetation to the south of the site hasn't taken hold. And the site is under 1 hectare, can be delivered within 5 years, and given the need for housing and the relative sustainable location, the officers have recommended this site for allocation.
Right. Councillor Coleridge.
I just wanted to endorse a comment that the officer made that Crab Hill is not, there is no footpath on Crab Hill, and it is a country road, so it can have excessive speed. So it's not ideal for pedestrians walking along that road. So I appreciate this will be part of the planning process there would have to be a solution that linked it up with Shelley Gardens and the Stone Path Meadow site. So I just wanted to put that on the record, please.
Yes, yep, certainly, Councillor Coleridge.
Thank you.
Any other comments on that one? No. Okay. I think, Gary, we can move on to the next one then.
Okay. I didn't read the recommendation, did I? Oh, did?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
excellent. Okay. HAT F 2187, Landoff Crab Hill. Unfortunately, it's got a very similar name, but this is much larger. It's further south of the previous site. You can just about see the previous site. You can see the corner of Stonepath Drive to the top. This is a greenfield site in use as agricultural land, being promoted for 100 dwellings, and access is proposed to be off Crabs Hill. This site is not recommended for allocation, though, due to its poor vehicle and pedestrian access, which relies on an unadopted, unlit country road, and it's unsuitable for the volume of traffic that would be generated for the number of dwellings. The site's low proposed density also raises concerns about inefficient use of land. The parcel contributes to the rural character of the settlement edge. Development will erode this character, particularly affecting users of nearby footpaths. The site's weak relationship to the built-up area of Hatfield Pebble further undermines its sustainability. So recommendation 2 is not to allocate land off Crabs Hill.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Moving on.
Yes, yep.
Okay. Okay, HAT F 2190, land on east side of Malden Road, 490 dwellings. Site is proposed residential development on 7.62 hectares of land, which has a history of gravel extraction and inert infill. So it would be classed as brownfield. The proposed volume of development is not documented. However, at 25 dwellings per hectare, we could get 190 dwellings. It's not recommended for allocation due to its isolation in the countryside. It has poor access visibility on a national speed limit section of Malden Road, and the need to breach a designated local wildlife site to create an entrance, resulting in amenity harm and wildlife loss. The site is PDL, but we think that potential contamination from its former use and the negative aspects highlighted previously means that on balance this site should not be allocated.
Okay.
So recommendation 3 is not to allocate. Next site.
Yes, please.
HAT F 2196, land to the west of Bury Lane. This can accommodate 86 dwellings. The proposed access is dependent on the closure of the A12 slip road, meaning delivery is unlikely until after 2031. Also, part of the site is expected to be subject to compulsory purchase for the A12 DCO to be used for ecological mitigation. That's to the west and to the north, I guess, and will reduce the developable area considerably. While the site is physically contained and has relatively low landscape sensitivity, concerns remain over the erosion of the rural-urban character, potential ecological loss, and poor amenity conditions due to the noise from proximity to the A12 and the railway. Without clarity on access and land availability, the submitted site as proposed is not supported by officers. So recommendation 4 is not to allocate. Okay.
Right. Yep, thank you, Gary.
HAT F 2417, land south of Church Road. That's for 65 to 80 dwellings. The greenfield site comprises of an unused paddock located to the south of Church Road, and it can be delivered within 5 years. This is not recommended for allocation due to the harm it would cause to the established character of the southern edge of Hatfield Peveril. By extending development beyond Church Road southwards into the countryside, which is unprecedented. While the site is well contained, accessible and benefits from relatively few constraints, it may impact on the setting of the Grade 2 listed Hatfield Peveril Priory, or is it Hatfield Priory, and its registered park and garden. Access constraints on Church Road and the risk of undermining the village boundary means that officers on balance think that this should not be allocated. So recommendation 5, do not allocate, HAT F2417.
Okay, thank you.
Why does it fail? There we go. HAT F2318, site at the Vineyards. This can accommodate 190 dwellings. So it's a site squeezed between the A12 and the Great Eastern Main Line. And it's on the eastern flank of Hatfield Peveril. Due to the A12 winding DCO utilising much of this site as a car park, it will not be available until 2030s and delivery is in the 5 to 10 year bracket. The capacity isn't submitted, so this is an estimate at 25 dwellings per hectare. It's not recommended for allocation due to its poor integration with the existing settlement and reliance on an unsuitable access route. Although the site is physically close to services and well contained within the landscape, access would require demolition of a dwelling and use of a narrow, unclassified road lacking footpaths. Additionally, the site would function as a cul-de-sac with no direct pedestrian or cycle link to the rail station, undermining sustainable movement. These constraints outweigh the site's proximity to infrastructure and its relative lack of other constraints. So recommendation 6 is not to allocate HAT F2318.
Yep.
And this is further to the north of the previous site, HAT F2194, land east of Yew Tree Close. It can accommodate 33 dwellings, sort of. So this site is in a linear layout south of the Great Eastern Main Line, and due to the A12 widening DCO, it will be used as a car park and as an access point to the station. It won't be available until the 2030s and is in the 5 to 10 year bracket. It's not recommended for allocation because while the land is flat, is featureless, it's relatively constrained by ecological heritage issues. The proposed access is via a long, narrow private track from Station Terrace, which is unsuitable for passing vehicles and for pedestrian and vehicle usage at the same time. It lacks passing points, and although an alternative access could be made possible through an adjacent site, there's currently no formal agreement, and these allocations haven't been secured. So recommendation 7 is not to allocate HAT F2194.
Okay. Thanks.
And moving on to Nounsley, I think.
Yes. Yep.
So Nounsley is within the Hatfield Peveril parish, but is a physically separated village with its own development boundary. There's no other local facilities, therefore residents are dependent on Hatfield Peveril for access to services. So HAT F2189 is land south of Nounsley Road. This is a resubmission of a 2016 site. It's on greenfield land and it's currently in use as paddocks or agricultural fields. And it intersects with, it's slightly west of where, I seem to be reading from the wrong one, apologies. Is this the right order? This is the right site.
It should be there.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, this is the right site. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So it's, as you can see, it's west of Nouns, where the intersection between Nounsley Road and Sportsman Lane is. The actual access would be to the west, and not where there's a little corridor on the east. The issue with that is that the land drops steeply, so access is quite awkward, and use of Nounsley Road is not recommended either because it's a narrow country lane with no passing point and little pavement west of Sportsman Lane.
Madam Chairman, are
Yes.
we discussing the right one? Because we've got 2198 up there, and the next one in our agenda is 2189.
There's two maps, there's two. Oh, yes, Councillor Valsfent, you are You're right.
Can we resolve 2198 and then I'll go back to 2189?
I think that's probably a sensible thing to do. I can just find it.
So, and recommendation is not to allocate 2198. And then,
Which is on page 34 of the agenda, land south of Lownsley Road, yes. All right, are we happy that's not allocated? Yeah, okay, fine, thanks Gary. We'll go back to 2189.
Okay, so 2189 is a garden within a residential curtilage. It's laid lawn and bound by trees. It's relatively well maintained. Access would be via Manor Road, which is the end of a residential street, and you would have to access it via Nounsley Village, accesses Nounsley Road again, so it's not particularly sustainable. And the recommendation is not to allocate HATF 2189.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so
Yeah, 218.
okay, site 2188 east of Waycott. This site is for 5 dwellings. It's 0.21 hectares, which is below the threshold for allocation.
Yeah, so, yes, not to allocate, that's fine.
This is HATF 2184, land at Greaves. This is also below the threshold for allocation.
Yep,
And it can't be accommodated by an extension to a development boundary.
yes, that's fine.
Site HATF 2186. This doesn't have a recommendation, so we'll have to create a recommendation 14 if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, that was just for 1 to 6 dwellings, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the site is for 1 to 6 dwellings, which is below the
Yes,
threshold.
so that would be, yes, not to allocate, yeah. Page 36.
It's
of your
below
agenda.
recommendation 11.
Yeah, it's on page 36.
3.106. 3. Yeah. 3.106. No, it's not on the recommendation, so we'll add it to the recommendation.
Yeah.
I do apologise.
All right.
Okay, HATF 2199, land south of Smithscroft, Wickham Bishops Road. This can accommodate 5 dwellings, so it's below the threshold, so it's not recommended for allocation.
Yep.
HATF 2197, land south of Middlefield, Alting Road. This is being promoted for 6 dwellings. There's other reasons not to recommend it, but it's also below the threshold.
Okay.
And then the report also asks members to retain allocations at HATF 2185, land east of Malden Road, which was granted plan permission. HATF 314, Stonepath Drive, which is nearing completion. A site at Small Acres, Malden Road, which has been granted outline plan permission, and a allocation at Coward's Garage, where 9 dwellings can be accommodated. Apologies, it says work started, but I think the trajectory is actually said that it's expired, or they may have technical start. There's a little bit of ambiguity on that.
Right, okay. Right, is that...
That's the end of the Hatfield Pepperell report.
Finished. Okay, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, 2 things, Madam Chair. Firstly, obviously listening to the speaker and about the amount of housing that Hatfield Pepperell has already taken and the capacity identified in the neighbourhood plan, I think this overall is the right position for the council to take, and all the uncertainties about the DCO and the A12.
Yeah, the
Obviously,
A12.
you can't really allocate land in that area. I've just got one question though. On the vineyard site, there was what looked like a large further site to the northeast of it. Is that part of the same one, or is that a different one that's connected? The top right of that is that different?
This is a strategic site that will be considered later.
Should that not be though in the report? Because I'm going to ask the same question about Kelvedon, where they're not mentioned in the agenda.
I can provide a list of sites that were not considered because they were too large and they are strategic sites.
I'm just wondering whether we should, as a matter of routine, say in the agenda,
We
identify
generally,
them but say that they're coming later.
yeah, generally speaking.
Because we are deferring some, aren't we?
Yes, we are, and actually I think
Not being consistent.
in the agenda so far we have been. This one's missing, and officers have flagged up when we come to Kelvedon. I think Sarah sent round an email just to say that there is a site in the Kelvedon which should also say deferred. So yes, apologies. It's just an error that they've not been flagged up, because generally speaking we are saying that they've been flagged as strategic sites. Yeah.
We will pick that up for future agendas.
Yeah, yes, we will. Right. Members, if nobody else has any comments, the recommendations are on page 24, so I think we can take those on block whilst just acknowledging the comment on recommendation 1 around the lack of a footpath and the access issues. We've noted those comments. So, yes.
Yes, sorry, Chair, there would be a recommendation 14.
Yes, you're
for
right.
HAT F 2186 Stewart's Malden Road, which is not to be allocated.
And the recommendation was missing. Yeah, Councillor Coleridge.
Sorry, could I add one more thing?
Yes.
The Cowards Garage, it says in the report 9 dwellings work started, but I believe the works haven't started yet. So do we need to take that comment out?
Yeah, Gary, do you?
Yeah, I'm happy to write amendment. As I say, there is a bit of ambiguity over that site.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Right. We'll note that too. Okay. Right. So can I just have somebody to move? Councillor Butler and Councillor Bowles-Flint second, and a show of hands, please. Right. That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Now we've got Kelvedon fearing to go. Members, do you want a 5-minute break? Yes, would you like just 5 minutes? Don't wander too far off and don't discuss anything on the agenda, please. Thank you. Right. Members, thank you. Oh no, still waiting. Councillor Martin, that's all right. Yes, good luck with that. Right, okay, members, thank you very much. We will crack on. Agenda item 7, local plan review, Regs 18, draft allocations for Kelvedon. Gary is presenting the report, and again, just a reminder, there is a site in here, Kelv 2212, where the report should say we'll be deferring that to a future meeting because it's a large strategic site. Okay, thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. Kelvedon is the key service village identified in the local plan. This means it's one of the larger and more sustainable villages in the district. It has a good range of everyday facilities, including a primary school, doctor's surgery, local shops, pubs, and a mainline rail station to London Liverpool Street, with journey times of around 56 minutes. Service 71 bus also runs every 30 minutes throughout the day. There's no secondary school or tertiary education, so pupils have to travel to Coggleshaw, Tiptree, or the nearest main towns. The A12 widening scheme will deliver an all-new movements junction at J24 and divert traffic from Fearing Hill High Street, improving safety and the environment in both villages. So the first site is being deferred. It's Kelv 2212, land at Bridge Farm, for 40 dwellings. The second site is Kelv 2214, land west of St Dominic's residential home. It can accommodate about 50 dwellings. They are being proposed as a specialist housing area. And it will comprise of 1- and 2-bedroom bungalows and a communal hub to be completed within 5 years. The site is recommended for allocation as it's in a sustainable location and well connected to Kelvedon. It's currently a managed wildflower field classified as greenfield but not in arable use. Site is adjacent to St Dominic's residential home and benefits from the existing infrastructure and access to the cloisters. Officers highlighted some concerns regarding potential ecological value and impact on countryside character and views towards the railway and nearby heritage assets. However, these are considered limited. The site is relatively well contained within the landscape, especially given surrounding permitted developments. And overall, it lies within a parcel of medium to low sensitivity according to the 2015 landscape character assessment. The contribution to specialist housing in the key service village is a significant benefit, and officers consider that it outweighs the identified constraints provided that heritage impacts are appropriately assessed and mitigated. So recommendation 2, Kelv 2214 is a recommendation for 50 dwellings.
Any comments, members, on that one? No? No? Okay, thank you, Gary. Oh, yes, Councillor Walsh.
Did I mishear you, Gary? Did you say 60? Because I think on the report it says 39 dwellings.
It should be 50. I noticed that at the bottom, recommendation 2 did say 39, but I think it's 50. I will check and I will make sure that that's correct when it gets to Reg 18.
Yeah, 50 in the report. Yes. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yes, please. Okay.
Moving on to Kelv 2215, land northeast of Cranes Lane. This site is currently subject to an outstanding appeal, and officers are not able to comment pending the outcome of the appeal. So recommendation 3 is to not allocate this site.
Right, okay, well,
KELV 2213 Coggleshall Hall Farm, 403 dwellings. This is a complex proposal on greenfield land to the northeast of Coggleshall Road. It's potentially a mixed-use development comprising of agricultural uses which do not require planning permission and uses that do. So there's some residential elements. That's 4.1 hectares. That could comprise of self-build, affordable and specialist housing, as well as market homes, I think. There's a community element, which are allotments, woodland, and open spaces, which is 6.4 hectares. And there's renewable energy, which is 3 hectares, which is presumably a solar farm at that size. There's also 1 hectare of employment, which it's described as a winery, shop and cafe, and not Class B2 or B8 employment use, or EG, office use. So the number of dwellings is estimated at 25 dwellings per hectare, and some of the affordable is also referred to as agricultural workers' dwellings for seasonal employees of the winery. Okay, so we've all taken all that into account. The site is not recommended for as residential allocation due to significant landscape, heritage and character impacts associated with the proposed housing elements. While the broader scheme includes some land uses which are supported by officers, such as biodiversity, renewable energy, rural employment, many of these could be delivered through existing agricultural permitted development or rural diversification policies without requiring the residential development. The housing component lacks justification or linkage to viability. So as the site's development will result in loss of mature hedgerow on Coggleshall Road, negatively impacts users of the footpaths and envelops a Grade 2 listed cottage, and without robust evidence of viability, the residential aspects of the scheme cannot be supported, so the whole scheme doesn't get supported.
yeah, bit of a mixed bag, that one. Right, okay, thank you.
Oh, and there's a list of all the various uses. Okay, KELV 2216 7Cs Kelvedon can accommodate 10 dwellings. It's in a very narrow plot. So the site's currently used as a small business / workshop with a new residential site, KELV 626, under construction to the south of it. The site is not recommended for allocation due to the conclusions of a recent planning appeal, which found that the proposed development would cause harm to the character and appearance of the area and the nearby listed building, and would pose unresolved flood risk concerns. Although the site is previously developed and adjacent to a residential scheme, no new evidence has been presented to suggest the circumstances have changed significantly. As such, officers maintain that the adverse impacts continue to outweigh the potential benefits of the site. So recommendation 5 is not to allocate 2216.
Okay. Yep.
KELV 2217 is land to the north side of Church Hill. This can accommodate 200 to 240 dwellings. It's not recommended for allocation due to concerns around access, landscape impact and amenity. Vehicular access would rely on Church Street, which crosses the Great Eastern Main Line at grade, so it has safety barriers and lights, but does raise potential safety and operational concerns with Network Rail. Access provision would also result in loss of established hedgerows, impacting the rural character of the area. The site lies within a medium to low capacity landscape parcel, and development would adversely affect the countryside setting, the amenity of nearby allotments and users of a footpath. So recommendation 6 is not to allocate KELV 2217.
Oh, Councillor Abbott.
Well, same point as before, Madam Chairman. You can see above and to the left huge swathes of land there, which I presume are part of King's Dean proposal. And there's nothing in the report about them, so I really think we should be referring. Don't think so. We should be referring to them. But also, would this one be part of King's Dean?
It's a separate landowner, so they could potentially come forward at a different timing and without contributing to any of the infrastructure that King's Dean would contribute to.
So I think, yeah, I know what you're saying, Councillor, but I guess that's why it's in a separate.
Yeah, it explains the second
report.
point, but I
Yeah.
stick to the first point that I think we should each committee meeting we should identify all of the proposals in each parish and then categorise them whether we're allocating, not allocating, or deferring.
Yeah, I mean, this is not allocated. Okay. I'll leave officers to
Yeah,
take
we'll
that
pick
away
that
and
up, yeah.
have a look. Okay. All right, thanks, Gary.
Okay, KELV 2218 and KELV 2219. This is two different applications on the same area of land. One of them promoted the whole site for development. One of the options was to retain some of the car parking. So further comments were received from from Fearing Parish Council in regards to the site. They queried whether the designation for car parking is still required and believe that the site may be more appropriately allocated as mixed use, which would reflect local needs more effectively. So this is 0.16 hectares of previously developed land adjacent to the rail station and within the development boundary. The promoter has indicated a proposal on adjacent land within the same ownership, had a planning application for 29 flats, a retail unit and commercial floor space. However, this was dismissed. So while the site is a previously developed land and in a highly sustainable location, allocation is not recommended at this stage for the reasons set out in the report, including there's no clear replacement strategy for the car park, and there's limited net gain in housing potential. The site's reuse may be appropriate for subject to planning conditions, consideration, but it is required, but it's not required for allocation in the emerging local plan. So recommendation 7 is to remove the employment designation, retain the car parking designation, and not to allocate deals of Kelvedon for 45 dwellings and a car park at this stage.
Okay. Councillor Bowers.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Though this is in the recommendation, it's not actually listed as the actual site numbers, and I don't know whether we need to actually put the site numbers in the actual recommendations. Because I presume it's recommendation 7, but it doesn't actually reference the site numbers.
Which is 2218 and 2219.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes, fine. And it's it's an not odd recommendation. So it's recommending several things, isn't it? Remove the employment designation, but retain the parking, but not allocate for dwellings. Is that right?
Yes.
I got that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same for recommendation 14. I think that was answered
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, okay. Yes, all right. I think yes, Councillor Mouse-Flint, yeah.
Just reading that again, that could be read by somebody who's not really into this as a bit confusing, because it actually says remove Kelvedon employment designation, retain the parking designation, and do not allocate deals of Kelvedon for circa 45 dwellings and car parking. But that needs to be kind of tidied up, that does, because that's a bit confusing.
It is, yeah.
Thank you.
It does say what's happening, but it is a bit, it doesn't perhaps flow terribly well if you don't know. Can we just, yes,
We will pick that up for the Reg 18 to make sure it's clear what it's useful to be.
right, okay. Right, thank you, Gary.
Kelv 2220, land south-east of London Road. This can accommodate 50 dwellings. The site's behind St Mary's Square and behind the listed buildings cluster to the southwest of the conservation area. There would be a loss of employment land and the access would require loss of vegetation on London Road. The site's not recommended for allocation and that's recommendation 8. Do not allocate Kelv 2220.
Okay. Yep.
Kelv 2221, land adjacent to Davy House. We have had a representation from the site promoter on this one, but I'll go through the site first. So the site is south of London Road, opposite a site that was recently permitted on appeal. It can accommodate 72 dwellings at 30 dwellings per hectare. However, much of the site is within a flood zone, and it would fail a sequential test if it's required for residential development because there are better sites elsewhere. Although the promoter disputes the flood zone classification, submitted evidence confirms alignment with the council's mapping. A flood risk assessment would be required to demonstrate the flood zone does not affect the development area. There's also loss of high hedge on London Road, erosion of the urban and rural fringe, and impact on the countryside character, which have been identified as harms. The site promoter has submitted an alternative plan for 10 dwellings on that sort of parcel, and is also undertaking further work to tackle the flood risk issues identified. These issues will be considered by officers further and can also form part of the drafting of a Regulation 19 report on this site.
Okay, yep. Oh, Councillor Abbott, sorry.
Yeah, just briefly, I know this site very well because I used to go fishing there when I was a teenager. The added point, apart from the river, the site which I know very well there and the flood risk, is that when the A12 work is completed, you're going to have a 6-lane road at elevation going quite close to that site. So I would imagine there's going to be quite significant noise issues from the A12.
Right.
Recommendation 13 is Cal 332, land adjacent to St Dominic's residential home, the Cloisters, to be retained for 7 dwellings. And we are out of, okay, so recommendation 14, the employment policy area at London Road is the blue area on the map. It doesn't have a code, I'm afraid, but it is within LPP 2 of the local plan. So the recommendation is to extend the blue area to the east to also incorporate the storage yard that is currently in employment use. And then recommendation 15 is the insert map for Kelvedon to be approved.
Right, thank you, Gary. Okay, members, the recommendations start on page 43, go on to page 44. There are a number of amendments which we need to... Do you
me to go through them?
Yes, actually, Sarah, that would be helpful, because I've got, I think, most of them down, but maybe not all.
Yes,
Thank
so,
you.
so in terms of amendments, KELV 2212 is deferred to a future meeting. KELV 2214 is clarity around the capacity of the site, so that'll be confirmed in the minutes. In terms of recommendation 7, then that will be expanded to include KELV 2218 and 2219, and that picks up all the amendments.
Yeah, yes, I think so. Right, so if we're happy with that, could somebody please move? Councillor Bowers-Flint, seconder, please. Councillor Coleridge, and a show of hands, please. Thank you, members. Right, that finishes Kelvedon, so we now move on to agenda item 8, which is Regulation 18 draft allocations for Fearing.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go through the description of the sustainability of Fearing in quite so much detail because it's right next to Kelvedon, so some of the same sustainability criteria applies. I will add that the Reg 18 preferred options local plan for Colchester City Council identifies Marks Tay as a growth opportunity and is supported by 3 sites totaling 2,500 dwellings plus employment land. However, these proposals are not close to the border of Fearing, and there's no opportunity for any integrated development on the district's borders. It should be noted that this Reg 18 preferred options local plan hasn't been endorsed by Colchester's members. So moving on to the first site, it's Fear 2129, land southwest of Spa Road, which can accommodate 11 dwellings. This is a residential house, garden and amenity land beyond the garden west of Spa Road. Development has capacity, has been calculated at 30 dwellings per hectare. It's within the development boundaries, so the recommendation is to allow the site to come forward through development management process and rather than allocate it. So recommendation 1 is do not allocate 2129.
Which I think is for 10 dwellings.
Well, that's just what I was going to ask, because Gary said 11.
It says 11 further down.
Right.
Oh,
but the recommendation is 10.
10, yep.
So can we just get
Yes,
that
let's make
corrected?
sure that.
Can I clarify?
Yes.
It's 10 net new dwellings, whereas the 11 refers to capacity gross. So there will be a loss of 1 dwelling to accommodate 11.
Right, okay. Okay. Right, thank you.
Fear 2130 Weavers Mill Lane. This can accommodate around 25 dwellings. It's an isolated site in the countryside. Should COG 2083 be approved for draft allocation at a later meeting, officers can review this site. So recommendation 2 is do not allocate 2130.
Yeah, good. Guy?
Fear 2131 Little Barrows, Wills End Lane. This is a residential dwelling, garden and paddock at the end of Mill Lane in open countryside. The site is isolated and lacks clear development context after looking, not reading off the correct bit. The site lacks adequate access and would lead to development that is out of character. So recommendation 3 is do not allocate 2131 Little Barrows.
Yeah, thank you.
Fear 2133, land at Wills Green, 1.7 hectares, can accommodate about 50 dwellings. The site is currently a wildflower meadow with boundary trees at the end of Old Fearing, and development would be on greenfield land. Access is the main issue here, as it would be via Wills Green, and as with any development north of the Great Eastern Main Line, vehicular access will be constrained by pinch points. In this case, it's Hanover Bridge. Wills Green itself is an unclassified road with no footpaths or streetlights, so recommendation 4 is not to allocate Fear 2133.
thank you.
FIR 2501, this is in 2 parcels submitted by the same applicant. It's land around Prested Hall, and they've proposed 60 dwellings with another site that could accommodate a specialist care home, which is estimated to be able to accommodate 60 as well. 60 dwellings. So the proposed development would extend built form into the countryside, which would be isolated from the development boundary. This would suggest a higher degree of car dependency and not to be sustainable, so is not recommended for draft allocation.
Yeah.
Officers can consider the site again should there be unmet need for specialist housing. So recommendations 5 is do not allocate 2501 land around Prested Hall.
Thank you.
FIR 2132 is land at London Road. This is an employment site. It's a large greenfield site located to north of A12. Currently it's inaccessible, but with detrunking it could become accessible. The main issues is that the site has a poor relationship with Fearing and impact on the countryside character and relative isolation. The Employment Land Review notes that there's a strong pipeline of existing extant permissions and allocations. Therefore, additional allocations, especially speculative employment land at this scale, is not required. And the recommendation 6 is not to allocate 2132 land at London Road.
Yep, thank you.
FIR 2412 is Great Domsey Farm, and this is being proposed as part of a 62.15 hectare mixed-use commercial development. I think it's in relation to the strategic development to the north. It's unclear how much residential is being proposed on this site. And this is similar to the previous employment site in that it's a standalone, isolated site that's not in a sustainable location for development, employment or residential, and that speculative employment land at this scale is not required.
Okay.
Recommendation 8 is that sites FIR 232, 233B within the strategic growth location is retained for 795 dwellings. Recommendation 9 is FIR 230 is retained for 40 dwellings. Recommendation 10 is that this this site off Inworth Road is removed from LPP 6 as a business park allocation.
Can I just ask why
it becomes whiteland?
Why that one? Why that is?
This is a change of use prior approval, which changed an office block into residential, so it's no longer in use for employment.
Okay, and I know it very well, know where it is. I just wasn't sure why it was.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Councillor
Are the green dots TPOs?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Recommendation 11 is that the inset map for Fearing, as shown in Appendix 1 of the report, is approved.
Right. Thank you, Gary. So, members, the recommendations are on page, there's 64 and 65. Do we have any amendments? Yes, we did.
It's only a clarification point on 2129,
Yes.
which is that it's
So-
11 in total, but 10
Yeah,
net new
that's
dwellings.
fine. Other than that, I think it was pretty straightforward. Would somebody like to move? Councillor Bowles-Flint, Councillor Ritchie, you seconding? Yep, and show of hands, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Right, well done. That is the end of the agenda. We have nothing under urgent business, either in public or private session, so I can close the meeting at 9:20. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, officers.